They were accused of intrigue, admired for their beauty, and feared for their influence. These women ruled from behind the scenes, inspiring great deeds and toppling dynasties. These are not just love stories. Discover how the world's most famous mistresses changed the destinies of their partners in history itself. Although Diane de Poitiers never wore a crown, she secured a truly unique position at the French court. Her story of love and power is as captivating as it is tragic. Born into a noble family, Diane dazzled at court from a young age. Her extraordinary beauty, grace, and intelligence made her a sought-after guest at any event. At just 15, she was married off to Louis de Guzman, an elderly nobleman who held a high position. Their marriage was more of an arrangement than a love story, but Diane quickly learned how to navigate the rules of this world. Diane's striking beauty, flowing hair, perfect features, and refined manners made men lose their minds. She studied literature, philosophy, and art, enchanting not only with her appearance but also her sharp intellect. The story of Diane and Henry II began when he was only 14 years old, and she was 20 years his senior. Henry, still a teenager, was mesmerized by her beauty, and when Diane became a widow, their relationship grew into much more than just love. She became his partner, not only in personal matters, but also in political ones. Although Henry II was married to Catherine de Medici, known for her ambitions and, let's say, not the warmest character, Henry could not tear himself away from Diane. Moreover, Diane wielded incredible power at court. She was not just his mistress, but effectively his right hand. Henry trusted her like no one else, and importantly, she was also responsible for his image in the eyes of the people. Everyone dreamed of being next to Diana, and she, like a true powerful woman, skillfully manipulated the situation, controlling not only the king's heart, but also the political situation. Even when Henry became king, Diane remained his one and only muse. She actively participated in decision-making, and her advice was always accurate and wise. Diane was the person behind many of Henry's political moves. When, in 1559, he signed an alliance with the Spanish, it was clear who stood behind this decision. Henry favored Diane, and it was evident. Catherine could only watch as her husband lost his head over another woman. He loved Diane so much that he made incredible gifts for her. One of the most famous was a diamond bracelet, which the king gave her as a symbol of his love. Gifts were not the only thing Henry gave Diane. He granted her vast estates, castles, and titles. She became one of the most influential women in the country. Diane remained at the peak of her fame until the very end of Henry II's life. But tragedy struck unexpectedly. In 1559, the king died during a tournament. His death marked the beginning of the end of her influence. Catherine de Medici, who had endured Diane for decades, finally took her revenge. She expelled her from court and demanded the return of all gifts, including the famous Château de Chenonceau. Diane retired to the Château d'Anay, where she lived in seclusion until her death. Diane de Poitiers was the embodiment of classical beauty and grandeur of the Renaissance era. Her story reminds us how personal charm and intelligence could conquer a king's heart and change the course of history. 2 centuries later, her legacy resonated in the life of another woman, the Marquise de Pompadour, who captivated Louis XV and became a symbol of the Enlightenment. Jeanne Antoinette was born into a banker's family, not the most aristocratic lineage for a woman who would one day end up at Versailles. Her mother was convinced that her daughter was destined for great achievements, so Jeanne received an excellent education. She studied music, painting, literature, dance, and everything else that might help her conquer high society. A family astrologer once predicted she would become the king's mistress, and Jeanne grew up believing she was destined for an exceptional fate. In 1725, her father went bankrupt and fled France, leaving his wife and children. In 1741, her adoptive father arranged Jeanne's marriage to his nephew, Charles Guillaume de Tilleul, the owner of an estate near Paris. The couple married, and 3 years later, they had a daughter, Alexandrine, who sadly died in 1754. All subsequent attempts by Jeanne Antoinette to become a mother were unsuccessful. On the night of February 25th to 26th, 1745, at a masquerade ball in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, held in honor of the Dauphin's wedding, Louis XV met a woman who literally shook his world. Soon, Jeanne Antoinette became the king's official mistress. She was given rooms above the monarch's chambers, connected by a secret staircase. In July, the king gave her the Pompadour estate in the Limousin region, along with the title of Marquise. After receiving a lucrative sinecure, her husband granted her a divorce. Louis XV was so obsessed with Pompadour that she became not just a woman at court, she ruled it. Their relationship was not only passionate but also incredibly deep. Louis trusted her like no one else, and she, in turn, used her position to the fullest advantage. The Marquise became one of the most influential figures at court, practically dictating to the king whom to appoint to important positions and whom to exile. Naturally, this could not go unnoticed. The courtiers hated her and spread rumors, calling her a bourgeoise who dared to sit on the throne alongside the king. Louis XV indulged Pompadour so much that some said she was practically a second queen. This, of course, caused indignation, as Louis was married to Marie Leschinska. But in reality, his heart and attention belonged to the Marquise. Jeanne Antoinette behaved with emphasized respect toward the queen. She actively supported the philosophers of the Enlightenment, patronized Voltaire, and helped strengthen France's reputation as a cultural center of Europe. The Marquise played a key role in the development of porcelain production in Sèvres and supported the creation of several architectural and artistic masterpieces, including reforms in the Palace of Versailles. Jeanne Antoinette lived a brilliant but challenging life. Her health gradually declined, and in 1764 she died at the age of only 42. Louis XV was inconsolable. He ordered the palace clocks to be stopped at the moment of her death, as if he wanted time to freeze in her memory. Women like the Marquise de Pompadour knew how to use their power to influence kings and politics. But Eleanor de Guzman went even further. Her love for Alfonso XI challenged the crown itself, changing the history of medieval Spain. Now let us move from Versailles to sunny Castile, where no less a captivating story unfolded. Eleanor de Guzman was not an aristocrat from high society. She came from a respected but not very wealthy family of Castilian nobility. However, her mind, beauty, and confidence quickly set her apart from the crowd. From an early age, she realized that her main weapon was charm and the ability to stay one step ahead. When fate brought her together with Alfonso XI, her life changed forever. At that time, Alfonso was already King of Castile and married to the Portuguese Princess Maria. But this did not stop either him or Eleanor. Their meeting was not just a coincidence. It was destiny, historians say. Alfonso XI was famous for his passion for women, but in Eleanor, he saw something more. She was not only beautiful, but also a woman with character, who could hold a conversation and, most importantly, inspire. Their romance began tumultuously. She captured his heart so much that he was ready to openly acknowledge her as his mistress, and this at a time when a king was obliged to uphold dynastic traditions and remain loyal to the queen. Her influence on Alfonso XI was so strong that he practically removed his lawful wife, Maria of Portugal, from court. His marriage to Maria was a political alliance, but his relationship with Eleanor was true passion. Eleanor gave the king 9 children, among whom was the famous Enrique of Trastamara, who became the founder of a new dynasty. All of them were raised in luxury and had clear advantages over the king's legitimate children, which, of course, caused outrage at court. The open relationship of the king with Eleanor de Guzman caused a storm of discontent. Queen Maria, humiliated and sidelined, did not sit idly by. She used all her political connections to undermine Eleanor's position. The entire court was literally divided into 2 camps. Those who supported the queen, and those who sided with Eleanor. And now imagine living in those times. Whom would you support? The queen, fighting for her rightful place, or Eleanor, a woman whose love transcended the bounds of royal duty? Write in the comments. But what did Alfonso do? Instead of calming the passions, he strengthened his defense of Eleanor. Moreover, he granted her lands and titles, effectively making her one of the most powerful women in the kingdom. But happiness turned out to be short-lived. After Alfonso XI's sudden death in 1350, Eleanor's life was turned upside down. Her protector, her love, her king could no longer shield her. The throne was taken by his legitimate son, Peter I the Cruel, who never concealed his hatred for his father's mistress. Eleanor, despite all her cunning and strength, could not escape retribution. She was captured and then executed by Peter's order. Queen Maria finally managed to avenge her rival, restoring her name and influence. But history remembered her as a cold and cruel woman, and Eleanor as a heroine of tragic love. Eleanor's son, Enrique, Count of Trastamara, and Peter I, the son of Maria of Portugal, began a civil war for control of Castile. In the end, Enrique won, who was crowned King of Castile and Leon. Let's go back 2,000 years to understand how one of the most powerful men of Rome lost everything because of his love for a woman who repeatedly changed the course of history. Mark Antony, a charismatic general and master of life, met the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. But here's an interesting point. At that time, he was married, and not just married, but to the sister of his main political rival, Octavian. Mark Antony married Octavia in 40 BCE. This union seemed perfect. She was beautiful, virtuous, and helped maintain peace between her husband and her brother. Everything appeared flawless until 41 BCE, when fate brought him together with Cleopatra, and the queen was ready to play, only by her own rules. Her arrival in Tarsus became a true spectacle, a golden ship with purple sails, surrounded by musicians and the fragrance of incense, while Cleopatra herself appeared as the goddess of love, Aphrodite. It was a moment one couldn't look away from. Antony, struck by her beauty, wit, and incredible charisma, could not resist. Cleopatra was not just a lover. She became his ally, partner, and the mother of his 3 children. She bore him twins and later another son. Meanwhile, in Rome, rumors were spreading, and whispers quickly turned into a loud scandal. Things escalated especially when Antony began granting Cleopatra more and more power. The culmination was the donations of Alexandria. He proclaimed her Queen of Kings and their children, heirs to vast territories. It seemed he was building his own state with Egypt at its center. In Rome, this caused shock. Octavian, a clever and calculating politician, did not miss the chance to exploit the situation. He spread rumors that Antony had completely succumbed to Cleopatra's influence. Forgetting about Rome, Antony delivered an additional blow himself by turning away from his wife, Octavia. She even tried to help him by bringing troops, but he not only refused them, but humiliated her by refusing to meet her. All this led to the inevitable war. The climax was the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE. It was a decisive battle. The fleet of Antony and Cleopatra fought against Octavian's army. The waves burned with fire. The air was filled with the sound of swords and cries. But when the outcome became clear, Cleopatra retreated, taking her ships away. Antony, forgetting everything, abandoned everything and followed her. For Rome, this looked like betrayal. Antony's soldiers scattered, and Octavian began celebrating his victory. The end of the story was tragic. Receiving false news of Cleopatra's death, Antony decided his life was over and took his own life. He died in Cleopatra's arms, learning she was alive. Realizing that she faced captivity and humiliation, the queen chose death. Legend says she allowed a cobra to bite her, preserving her pride. Thus, their love became not only the scandal of the century, but also the reason for their downfall. It was a story of passion that changed destinies. What do you think? Was this love worth such sacrifices? Write your opinion in the comments.